Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's live game development show. I'm fairly live this week, though classes have given me a little bit of a lack of sleep. This week it's going to be about kind of taking, well, he's in the chat with us right now. 123 Gas at the end of last week's episode mentioned kind of a way we can get around the tutorial problem we were having, which is starting on the ground and then moving to the air. So I think I want to do that, and I think the way I want to do it is by making the opening a little more interactive, rather than just being like a kind of a demo. It's a good chance to force the player to do a few things, learn a few things before they actually start just flying around freely, without making it seem like it's a tutorial level or something like that. So let's jump over to the task list and get started. So this task list is over at Trello.com. If you search for Trello on Project Skyring, you should be able to find it. Let's see. Opening, make interactive. There's the task. It's quite large. Didn't get a lot of overtime done. About the only thing I fixed was that the player moves a little bit to the left, but since we're making it interactive, that's probably not going to be relevant anymore. Obviously, just every night after work classes, so no overtime. So opening, make interactive. Just to show you what the opening is. Let's get this started. The first time loading, it's always going to take a while because it has to convert all the music. Speaking of the music, all of the soundtrack stuff, the BGM, like the 1 minute game loops that I've got going for all the different levels, I have been making longer versions of them on the mini train rides to Tokyo, but usually aiming for about 3 minutes, more than 3 minutes or so. For each one, and just kind of maybe doing a key change or something to vary it up a little bit, just to make it feel like a 3-4 minute long song. I'm not going to use those in the game because the 1 minute loops work fine. I think the fact that they're short, they're not complicated, they don't do a lot, they don't attract a lot of attention is what makes them kind of good background music. But, you know, just to have a game soundtrack that's not just like 1 minute game loops. And it's interesting for like practicing music anyway, so works out. And 123 Gas was talking about a little project he has to do. I have to document my process in a way that feels unnatural to someone who doesn't fully understand what I'm doing. My art lecture is a little too old school for computers. Okay. I get you, I get you, I get you. You're explaining what you're doing to someone who doesn't know what you're doing, as opposed to like just a teacher saying describe your process or something. Okay, that's interesting. That's much more challenging because you can't assume knowledge on their part. It always makes writing harder. But here's the opening new game. So when you start a new game, right now you start at the grave, you move up to grab your boomerang here. Oh, which is also the thing that allows you to fly. And you take off. And after the guy is done speaking, you move to the next room where the game actually starts. I guess I did get a little overtime done. I forgot to mention I did put in graphics for like the controller and stuff, so those are ready to go when I need them. So for example, you know, this is where we got last week with the mouse, the flying stuff. You know, move the mouse around, click the right mouse button and kind of circle, you know, things like that. But the problem we had last week, as we mentioned, is with the flying thing, it's hard to control what the player's doing. Like, if they don't know what they're doing, the whole landing process is where we were having the problem. Because, you know, you're flying over the beach, and while you're over the beach, you have to press, you know, the left mouse button to land. The problem with that is, of course, because the player is gliding, they're not going to stop midair unless you stop them as the game designer. So it would feel a little artificial. But if we start on the ground, as 123 Gas mentioned last week, the advantage to that is the player on the ground is not automatically moving. So what you can do is you can just have a tutorial that says, you know, points to the nearest beach or something, and then when you're over the beach, it shows the mouse image. You click the left mouse button and you take off, and that's when you realize, oh, okay, I can fly, and these beaches are where I kind of take off and land. So, when you are in the actual game itself, and you're over a beach, and there's a little like mouse button or something that pops up, you're going to kind of figure out, oh, okay, this is how I get back on the ground. You at least have that concept in your mind that you can be on the ground and do stuff because you were on the ground. So that's kind of an important change in things. Yes, and for the mouse, it definitely looks more fancy compared to what I remember seeing before. Yeah, the mouse looks a little smoother and stuff. And Panda Bits! Been a while. Good to see you, Panda Bits. I'm not sure how good I am, but I am a Tengu, so yes. Hello, good Panda Bits. Good to see you. So we're doing tutorial stuff today. Just getting started. Just mentioning like 123 gases in the chat at the end of last week. Had the idea of switching the tutorial around so that you start on the ground, so that you at least get the takeoff concept in your mind before actually doing all the flying stuff. So, the other good thing about being on the ground is that you can do all the other kind of tutorials as well, especially before they're enemies and things. So you've got movement, landing, taking off, and all that stuff. So probably today, it's going to be these ones, I suppose. Circling, takeoff. Yeah, those are probably about right. And, you know, we can also do the artifact and monolith stuff as well. Is it worth doing a monolith tutorial? I suppose it is. Maybe. Maybe just an artifact tutorial. Because the monolith thing, I think players will figure out eventually anyway, so that's not too important. We can probably do these two at the same time later on. So, taking off, well, let's put these in order. Grab the boomerang, use it. Actually, let's do this. Let's treat the boomerang as an artifact. If we do that, then we've got, you collect an artifact, get a boomerang, and take off. It's a little different from the other artifacts, so I'm not going to put it in the list of like 200 artifacts that we have going, but just to kind of make it feel like a proper artifact. So to do this, we have to make the opening interactive. Just in case I mess things up, I kept the old timeline here so that I can always revert back to what I'm doing. But timeline opening right now, kind of forcing the player to fly and go up on my end, but I could switch the player to being the interactive version somewhere around here. Let's see. So I've got to move some of this stuff out to the opening object, the system object. Object opening. Let's just make a user event and dump this stuff in there. Change to flying player. I guess this is going to be what the player's doing, so we don't have to worry about this. I'll keep it just so I remember how I did it, but we're not going to be using this. Yeah, I'm not going to be using that. I'm not going to be using any of that. Update the target to go up. This is going to be the player as well, so I'll just copy this over and comment it. Same with this stuff. So all of that stuff that we've been kind of autopiloting for the player is more or less going to depend on player action. Visualize monolith. This is just the voice. Okay. So to be honest, there's not much reason for a timeline at this point. And you know, if there's just going to be one step after 60 frames, an alarm is plenty. So let's go ahead and switch this over to an alarm and skip using the timeline. It'll make it clear anyway. So alarm 1, 60 frames. So let's just say room speed. That's one nice thing about using alarms as opposed to timelines as well, is if the frame rate changes, it's not going to make a big difference. And we don't need timelines. Okay. So the opening timeline is just going to disappear. It's not letting me save the timeline. Ah, go Game Maker. What? It does that once in a while. I have no idea what it is. Just randomly when you're doing stuff in Game Maker, it stops working and gives you that error. So that happens once every couple of months. So you got to see it today. But Panda Bits, sorry I wasn't here last week, but I was moving. That is a very good excuse. Moving. How did the move go? Yeah. Okay. Got that out of the way. Starting up Game Maker again, which means we're gonna have to reconvert the music. So I hope the move went well. Moving always kind of sucks. I don't like it very much. I don't like helping with it, and I don't like doing it. Both, I suppose. Just unpacking's okay. It's the packing part that I don't like. And 123 Gas said, not much of a programmer, but I like being here for the design and art narrative direction. Okay, interesting. Interesting. And 123 Gas, Flash crashes for me all the time. Okay, well, yeah, I guess Adobe products, they do crash quite a bit. Well, Acrobat's okay, but yeah, Flash, Shockwave, all those things used to crash quite a bit, so I suppose that's Macromedia. Okay, let's try this again. Should be able to delete the timeline now. Yeah, so you get to reconvert all of that background music. That's one thing I do wish Game Maker would do. As I mentioned before, it's like you don't need a temp directory for some of this stuff. Yeah, Game Dev. Game Dev 513, welcome to the chat. Game Maker crashes all the time for you. Oh yeah, it does. It does crash quite a bit. Sometimes it is my fault, so I can't always blame Game Maker. But yeah, that last one was obviously just some random thing that didn't get set. Okay, as long as it works. Like what should happen is basically the game should freeze at the opening and then not be able to do anything. From there, we can start making it more interactive. But Game Dev 513, what we're doing today is we're taking the game that we've been working on for the past, what is it now? If it's May, well, we started working on it at the end of last July, so about 10 months or so. Just, once a week, coming here every week. So probably the player won't move. Yeah, there we go. So at least it's working, We should be able to delete this old timeline now. Yes, okay. And the voice and everything else seems to be working the same. Yeah, because the voice thing is, after doing all the timings on the voice, I just create the voice object and it goes through all this stuff automatically, so I don't have to do any of that stuff with timelines either. So that's kind of good news to not have to use the timeline. System, let's see. First order of business is making it interactive, so after 60 seconds and the voice starts, you've got to be able to move. May just make it so that the player can move right off the bat, because if there is that kind of period where you can't move, it can be frustrating in games. So it might just be best to do that. Let's see. Let's do that. Would like to remember this, but player object, player ground. Start on the ground. Probably don't need to do any of this stuff. Let's see. With object player, distance change to ground. And GameDev513, thank you for the follow. What genre is my game? Right now, let's see. This season, the game is it's it's a flying game where you have to circle enemies to destroy them before they destroy you. So it is somewhat action-based, but it's more of an action-adventure game. So basically, the goal is you have to fly around this world, find kind of these artifacts of lost civilization, collect enough of them, and kind of figure out what went wrong with the world and stuff like that. So it is more of an adventure game. It does have a bit of a creepy atmosphere. It's not like outright horror, like there aren't like zombies chasing after you or anything like that. But you know, atmosphere-wise, it's a little darker. So it's a little grim, I suppose. Dark adventure. I guess that would be the genre they would throw on the back of the box or something. But obviously, with your name, GameDev513, you obviously do game dev, and if you know that GameMaker crashes, you obviously use GameMaker, or you've used it in the past. So, like, what kind of stuff have you done? Have you put any games out there or anything? I always mentioned to people in the chat, if you are working on projects or something, feel free to link it. I don't block links or anything, so if you do have a project page or anything like that, feel free to throw that link in there. I like going and seeing those too. I think these are going to be kind of the same. So I guess the first thing is not to create a player ground object, but a player object. Okay, start on the ground. All right, let's see what happens. If I can move the player, then things are working. If it breaks something, obviously things aren't working. Am I fairly fluent in GML? Yeah, I would say so. I think I can get most things done in GML. I usually use scripting for stuff now. Okay, things are obviously going wrong, so probably what happened is by using an object player, it automatically initialized the player to a very strange place. So let's see, let's go into object player. Probably what I'm going to need to do is change where the player is being set up. Yeah, it's all this stuff that's kind of getting in the way. And Game Dev mentioned I'm developing a roguelike game, just creating an algorithm for random dungeon generation. Very cool. Yeah, I guess that's one thing to mention about this. The landscape and the islands and stuff that you fly around are procedurally generated in here, so kind of doing the same thing as well, like random generation and stuff. And Pandabit said the rang, is that a typo? Oh, typo. The rang, a typo on the typo comments. But yeah, the rang is actually just the name of it. It's not the boomerang. May change the name, but I kind of like the rang as it is, just as a special object. So let's see, load player. We've got a lot of things going on here script-wise. Assuming that you're jumping into a room for the first time, like when you load the game and stuff. So that's probably what's creating a lot of the problem here. So let's see, that's in system. No, file. File system, load player, room, load player. There we go. So, yeah, it's reloading, respawn X, respawn Y, power level. Okay. Yeah, if it's gonna load the player, then we have to set some of this stuff in advance, don't we? Or we have to override it right after this. Okay, and then jump room. Let's check what that does. Before I start like scrapping things, let me see what these things do. Jump room, that one is actually in player. Jump room. Map, jump room, okay. So it takes the respawn. So if you're not in the room you're supposed to be in, it first sets that and then goes to room. So yeah, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. How do I get around this? Here's the problem with the game logic. Up until now, because the opening has been very different, I've been able to do this with the game flow. Like, if you start a new game, you had the dummy character in here that was just kind of playing out what he needed to play out. Would fly up and then it would change to a room. When you came into this room, it would use the jump room and all that sort of stuff to set things up the way it was supposed to set up. That worked fine. If you use continue game, same thing. Player worked fine. The problem is right now we have two possible places where the player could be interactive, and the logic is not defined around that. Let's see. The only way I can think to do this is to move this off to a user function and then call it if it's not a new game. That seems to be the only way we can do this. And just check what user functions the other ones are using. User defined 14. Okay, so 2 is open. So user defined event 2. So this stuff only happens if loading the player. If loading the player. Then we need to do all the stuff we used to do. So this stuff. Let me just double check load player. I want to make sure I'm not going to lose data on anyone. Load stoke count, that's per game. Monolith count per game. Power level per game. Respawn XY per game. Okay, so all that stuff's per game. So if I start a new game, it's okay that I get rid of it all. Good. I designed for the future. That's good. All the stuff like keeping track of the artifacts you found across all your games is in another place, so I don't have to worry about that stuff. Now, let's see. Is there a way to see whether or not it's a new game or not? If I already have a variable for it, I guess it'd be okay. Respawn X, latitude, global map latitude. So if my global map latitude is the opening room, then I shouldn't use the user event. So that's probably how I can go about this. Let's search for that. Map latitude. Okay, let's find it. Okay, yeah, so this is what we want basically. As our kind of check on the stuff. So if global map latitude is equal to opening, is not equal to opening, then we need to do the little extra stuff. So event user 2. Okay. Yeah, some of this other stuff we could probably move out of this as well, but let's just take it a step at a time. So now it shouldn't override all that stuff. If the player still starts in the ocean, obviously things are still going wrong. And yeah, Panda Bits. Oh, like Boomerang. All right, yeah. It's just a short name for boomerang, so it doesn't sound like just boomerang. Like it's just, an Australian boomerang or something that this person is using to fly around the world. There we go. Okay. So I can dance on the grave right off the bat. I suppose that's something. And I can go up here. So probably, have to set up something so we're within a certain range of collect the boomerang. And probably have to get rid of some of these mountains. So I have to change the room around a little bit to make the beach easier to get to. Because before the player was flying over the mountains. That's out of the way now. Yeah, I probably have to rearrange this room to fit a tutorial better, because it was just made for an opening. It was basically made to look cool while you're flying over it, so very different requirements for what the room layout would be. Yeah, should I block the collision on this? It's kind of disturbing that you can walk right over the grave that you start with, but this does give us the room to do the tutorial. Good thing you dug yourself out of the grave yourself. Ah, yes. A little altered beast. Rise from your grave. Action here. Yeah, the other thing about having this interactive is that we actually have to build out the rest of the room. Obviously before, the player wasn't actually able to get down, so I didn't actually put anything there. And let's see, so it's mostly rearranging the room. I guess for now I'm going to keep it simple. Rearranging the room is something I can do offline. You guys have seen me do that enough times where I don't think you need to watch me sit here for like 30 minutes rearranging tiles or whatever. But I will rearrange enough of the tiles so that you can get to the beach here. Probably use mountains or something to kind of steer the player into a certain direction. And make sure there are no like beaches at the bottom or something. So the player is basically going to take off from one location and go up. Keep it nice and guided. So the first thing is to collect the boomerang. Let's see. The other first thing would probably be to show the mouse tutorial as well. If the player doesn't move the mouse, then show it. So let's see. Tutorial movement. Timeline tutorial movement. Tutorial manager. So that's where I'm doing everything. The tutorial manager makes sense. That's probably what a tutorial manager would do. Okay, creates the tutorial mouse image, sets 0 to roam speed. It gets the initial player like mouse position and stuff so that you can tell what they're doing with the mouse. And depending on which timeline it is, it checks for different conditions. So this is all the flying stuff that we did last week, but tutorial ground movement. This is pretty much going to be the same as the flying stuff. The only difference is that the mouse isn't necessarily going to be left and right and all that, but should be more or less the same. Basically, as soon as the player moves the mouse, they no longer need this tutorial. Rotation? Yeah, I guess they need the rotation stuff as well. So it's kind of the same deal. It's kind of the same deal. I guess what we could do is just keep it as is. Is there anything that's going to be different on the ground and the air? Well, in case there is something different, let's go ahead and split these off. So even though we're kind of copying and pasting a lot of code, let's still split it up. Ground rotation. In fact, do we need to tell the player about ground rotation? It's probably not that important. It's not really something they need to know. If they figure it out, great. If not, then it's not a big deal. And then Pandavit say you can make it so that if the player walks over the grave, the game ends. That's a good idea. Altered Beast, you go backwards. Go back to your grave. Yeah, if this is the apocalypse, I'm going back to sleep. Well, that's actually a pretty good solution. If you're like the last person left in the world or something, and all you can do is run from things and grab leftovers from civilization, it's probably just as well to stay asleep. Good point, Pandavits. Yes. Wouldn't be much of a game, but logically. It's a very good point. Let's see, timeline index none, so basically the same exact things. Timeline index, yeah, okay, that's fine. So let's go ahead and duplicate these. Timeline, because they could turn out to be different. Slightly different requirements. Okay. So those are filled in. And sure that. So the first tutorial we want to start out is ground movement. And decent scrimp is in the room. Let's make this party decent. If only a party could be decent. I've only been to good parties and awesome parties. I've never been to a decent party. Still waiting for that day. Well, back in Juso, I guess when we used to go to the Juso parties, those were decent. Ground movement tutorial manager. Okay. Where am I actually creating the tutorial manager? Object opening, user defined event 0. Okay, so this is when I'm changing rooms. So, yep, we've got to move this forward. No longer doing this. Copy that. This is the function that was called after the tutorial was over and you moved rooms. But now we're not doing that. We are doing it here. Initialize tutorial. Okay. Obviously only if the player hasn't had the tutorial before. They don't need it every time. Yeah, Juso just is a decent kind of town. It has its own Mr. Donuts, so that's already a good start. You can pick up your dry old fashioned there before the party starts. There we go. Okay, so yeah, if you haven't figured out that you should move the mouse, then obviously this thing will show up. Move. It's gonna do the rotating thing. There you go. Yeah, again, is it worth teaching the player how to rotate on the ground when there's really no reason for it? Probably not. It might not be worth it. So maybe skip the ground rotation stuff. And I'm not going to give the player like arrows or anything because that's kind of too much hand-holding. It'd be a very Japanese style of doing things, like go here, do this, and pointing your finger at the player and kind of forcing them to do stuff. And I don't like that style at all, so yeah, probably just let them freely roam and figure things out, you know? Obviously, you know, one look one look tells you that this is something different. So, you know, if you're wandering around and you see this, hopefully as a player your curiosity is going to make you want to go towards that anyway. I would hope. So let's see, that's a special tile. So I just have to get the player's distance to that tile to trigger that event. I think, what is it called? Obj hex rang. Well, there we go. Objects rang. So the player's distance to this should determine whether or not they pick up the boomerang. So objects rang. Let's see. I guess if that's the only place I'm using it, I can put the check in here. So check player distance. There's only one rang in the game, so you're not gonna break your rang and have to find another one or anything. 1, 2, 3, gas. I'll bring the gas. Can't have a party without gas. No, you can't. Especially if it's a Mad Max party. You cannot have a party without gas. You need lots of flame jets and stuff. Which, yeah, speaking of that, thinking of Fury Road, it does kind of beg the question, if they're so obsessed with gas, why are they like having giant jets of flame and stuff when they're driving around? They could just be more fuel efficient, like Mad Max. You would think in a Mad Max world, you would want like a Prius or something, more than like a Viper or something, like a sports car or tanker or something. That'd be a very different Mad Max, a very eco Mad Max. Just like half-naked Australian men running around in like Priuses. It'd be a very different movie. But Panda Bits, yes, the dry old fashioned. That goes back to there's a place that sells donuts, a chain in Japan called Mr. Donut, and their standard old fashioned is as dry as a bone. Their other donuts are okay, but that one, both me and Decent Scrimp cannot understand why anyone would want that thing. You could basically, if your house is flooding, you just throw it on the ground and it would probably absorb all the water. It's that dry. But it's popular, so there we go. Guess people like their dry donuts. Check the player distance. So I think this is, what is it? Distance to object. That would work. It doesn't have to be exact, so distance to object should be fine. Although it's not really a collision thing, so it might be more efficient to use distance to point. Let's just use distance to object. Make sure that it exists, unless the game breaks, it should exist, but just in case. If distance to object, that is less than, let's just say 300 pixels. Sure. Let's try that. And we're going to borrow from that event that we had earlier. So let's see, player, tutorial manager, there we go. Not tutorial manager, opening. There we go. So turn the boomerang off, so we got to do this stuff. So turn off the object. Probably have to unlock that the player can use the boomerang as well, because otherwise, before they collect the boomerang, if they remember, how to use it, and then that's going to be weird. Don't need any of this stuff. Let's comment this stuff out while I still remember it. Otherwise, weird things will happen. This is all that opening stuff. Okay, fade out. Yeah, it's all the same. So turn the boomerang off. That's fine. And then we have to unlock that the player can actually use it. So we do need a little extra thing in here. Peel boomerang. Set to true. So we probably want to set this to false. Do I have something in the step that's going to set it back to true on me? As there's never the assumption that you would not be able to use the boomerang. It looks like it's okay. So if I set it to false at the very beginning of this, that should be okay. Disable player boomerang. And Cirrus drops by. You serious? Hope you're having a good weekend. Opening disable the player. So with Obj player ground, PL Boomerang false. I think this should mean they can't use it. I think so. I should have at least some variable that does that. This just makes the most sense because it's named that. I think that's the case. So we disable it there, so we're going to have to enable it here. And that's probably when the tutorial on the boomerang starts. But let's just see if that's working. Obviously, if I can throw the boomerang before I go up and collect it, things are not working. Too bad, Cirrus. I wish it was a good weekend, but hope you're having a good one. Yeah, I'm having a good one. Yesterday was really long with classes. I had to go down to Tokyo, be at classes starting from 9:20 in the morning until about like 5:30 in the evening, and then after that they introduced all the different like professors and stuff and what they're doing, so I should be able to pick a lab and all that. Have to do that real soon. Real soon. I think I've decided who I want to pair it with. So if I hit the left mouse button and a boomerang thing happens, then... It seems like I wasn't able to use it the first time, though. Let's just check and see if this works. Okay, yeah. Obviously 300 pixels is too far, so that gives us a problem to fix. Alright. So 300 is way too much. Let's drop this down to 100 first off, and let's check on Boomerang here. Manual input. So what is required for me to throw the boomerang? Yeah, it does seem to be the true condition. So what is setting it to true? I wonder if I'm changing to Obj Player Ground. Maybe I'm doing it too late. Let me just check something real quick, because it felt like the very first time I clicked the mouse button, nothing happened. Could just be my imagination. It's gonna depend. It's gonna change what we do next. Yeah, definitely couldn't click and do it the first time, but the second time. I know what it is. It is actually working. It is actually working. Remember, like before, this thing was already gone, which means we'd already collected it even though it was off screen. So actually, setting PL Boomerang to false is working just fine. And if I get close enough, collected it, and now I can use the boomerang. Okay, so it was actually working. It's just I was already too close to this thing. So 100 is still too far. It seems like you should be around this area before you can collect that thing. Probably need, the animation need to do like a Zelda holding the boomerang over your head or something with a little fanfare jingle or something. The next thing is to force the player to hold the mouse button down. That might be tricky. Let me just see something real quick. It feels like the mouse button for the boomerang is not responding the very first time I click it. So I think I have to set another variable somewhere. I'm getting that feeling. Yeah, okay, it's definitely not working the first time, so I think there's one more variable I have to set in here. That should do what I need it to do. Not too bad, not too bad. That wasn't too bad to set up, as long as it works, of course. Okay, game. Okay, got my boomerang, and if I just tap it. Yeah, the tutorial doesn't go over. But if I hold it for at least a second, it goes away. Good, good. Love it when things work, because they usually don't. So, now we've got to adjust this room a little bit. I don't want to reconstruct the whole room, live, because that's probably not terribly exciting, but I do need to at least make enough of this room so that the player can get up to a beach and take off. It's way down at the bottom here. So I need to kind of rearrange this a little bit. The mountains. So probably going to have mountains all around the bottom so that the player can't go down, and that just have a valley so that they can only go out this way. So more or less, this is kind of the image. Starting down in this area, rimmed by mountains, you go up to the path and you reach the beach, and then you get the tutorial on taking off. And then, of course, this looks extremely weird, so I'm going to fill this out later, but that'll be offline. At least that's not too complicated to do. Yep, that should be okay. So now it's just when the player's on the beach, probably when I give them a tutorial until they take off. So if they're on the ground and they're on a beach, give them the fly tutorial. So that's going to be the next tutorial. And flying is the same as the boomerang button, so it's going to be very similar to timeline boomerang, except we don't need to have the hold the mouse button check. There's my click, and it fades away properly. Okay, so the only thing I have left to do now is, besides fixing that whatever I was just about to fix, string around the finger, is to make the player actually fade out of this rim and move to the next one, as they were before, because otherwise the game will never start. Yeah, the left-right mouse thing is still not working, so that's not cool. There we go. Okay. The fade is a little quick, so it doesn't feel like you're really going to another room, so we'll have to adjust that a little bit. But the game is working, you're starting. Are you in a new room? Yes, you're in a new room. There are islands here. There we go. Okay. A few problems to iron out, but the general flow is working. That's a good state to be left in, because obviously, like I said at the beginning of the show, again this week I have classes, so I'm not going to be able to do really any overtime. But episode 43 smells like an opening. We did make the opening interactive. We didn't do an artifact tutorial, really. I guess we should kind of time the messages that the narrator's speaking to be, triggered by this boomerang collection. So I'll keep that off to the side there. But we do have the boomerang, the takeoff. We do have a ground movement tutorial, although I don't know if that's in here. Yeah. It was basically copying and pasting the flying stuff, though. But I do have a few bugs I need to work out. Flying movement tutorial gets skipped. That's one problem. What else do we have as a problem? The fade is too fast. That's not really a bug, but let's just list it as a bug. Fade out of tutorial. Sequence? Too fast. Yeah, I better type these things now because I won't remember them a week from now. And if I can handle them in overtime, well, that's great. Okay. Put those in the list. All right, so that's episode 43. Let's think about episode 44. Let's go ahead and do the extra Twitch commands. Reset the world. Okay. And we'll do that later. Actually, that's week 44, so knock that out of the way. Okay. Okay. Rearrange things. So, next week, let's add in the other Twitch commands, because we do already have a couple of Twitch commands, but we should add in some more, because otherwise it doesn't work as a feature. So that's going to be next week. Same Tengu time, same Tengu station. So thank you for watching our game development show. You can catch past episodes and this one over at youtube.com/BlueTenguStudio. If you are watching this later on YouTube, come drop by the live show we do every week at Twitch TV Blue Tengu. This is where the fun is to be had, because there's interaction to be done and insider jokes to be made. We do this Sundays 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in Japan, which translates to Saturdays 4 to 6 Pacific, 5 to 7 Mountain, 6 to 8 Central, 7 to 9 Eastern. If you're in the UK, it starts midnight, like that Saturday to Sunday midnight, that dividing line, midnight to 2 a.m. Obviously, if you're in Japan with me, it's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And if you're in Australia, it starts anywhere from about 8 to 10 or 11, depending on where you live, and noon in New Zealand. But we always announce what we're doing through Twitter, so follow BTengu, BTENGU, to keep track of when the live show starts or episodes go up on YouTube, or follow us on Twitch or YouTube and get announcements that way. Of course, you can always see what we're up to anytime at our site, bluetengu.com. And again, if you pitched in a little extra for Project Spaghetti, our Season 1 game, over at itch.io, you have the Sapphire key file. You can grab prototypes. The tutorial stuff, yeah, it's probably not worth really uploading it until it's done. So the latest prototype, the game should be pretty much fully playable until the end. I haven't actually tested it from start to finish, so there could be some stopping points there. But I think theoretically it's possible to play it through to the end. Of course, we would always appreciate any support you give us getting greenlit on Steam as well. So if you search for Project Spaghetti on Steam, you can find our Season 1 game. It is very retro, so obviously it's one of those things that's difficult to get through Steam. But thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.